All right, everyone, welcome back to day one of Connected Content Week. Hopefully you all had a few minutes to digest everything that Duncan said, nip to the loo, make yourself a cup of tea, get a drink. So that was an incredibly inspiring talk, and hopefully you've all taken away loads and loads of ideas from that. As we said at the beginning before we heard from Duncan, we didn't have time for Q&A today, but he is really happy to take questions from you. So please do go and find him on Twitter. His handle is @DuncanJWardle, and he's very happy for you to ping him a question on there and we'll get back to you. The other thing that we wanted to say just before we move into our panel discussion is that we know that these kind of talks at events like this one, even though this is virtual, always bring up loads and loads of really great ideas. And then you leave the event, or you turn off your laptop and go and sit in a different spot in your house, and those ideas don't happen. So what we're asking people to do today, if you feel inspired by what you've heard so far, is to make a pledge about the one thing or two things that you will change. So if you go into the networking tab, hopefully you've all found that now, it should be there on the left for you, and type in I will, and then the one thing that you're going to do off the back of what you heard today from Duncan, or maybe what you hear from our panelists now. So I will ... whatever it might be. I will commit to going a different route to work. That's a bad one in current circumstances, isn't it? Because no one's going anywhere, but you get the idea. Do that. Our moderators are in there, and there will be some follow-up from them. We will try and hold you to those pledges. So please go ahead and do that if you feel comfortable. Okay, so moving on to the second part of day one, which is our client panel, which I'm very excited to be moderating today. We've got three great speakers. I will let them introduce themselves. The theme of the panel today is creative storytelling to deliver results. So coming off the back of what Duncan just shared with us, thinking about how we can take some of those ideas around creativity and innovation and what they mean from telling a company story, telling a brand story, connecting with your audiences to deliver results. And this really sits in the heart of Tell It, which is the first pillar of connected content. So without further ado, I will let the panelists introduce themselves. So we're going to go in alphabetical order and start with Eloise, please.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I'm Eloise. I'm Head of Corporate Digital here at British Land. We are a FTSE 100 property company. We have a portfolio of around, well, at the last count, around £15 billion worth of property. My role is to manage all the digital content and channel for the corporate brand.
Thanks, Eloise. And then we've also got Luke. Luke, you there?
Hello, everyone. My name's Luke Dodd. I'm the Global Digital Media Principal at Anglo American. We're a FTSE 100 mining company. We're based in, or headquartered in London. We've got operations across the world, so South Africa, Chile, Peru, Brazil, Australia, Finland, lots of places. I've worked there for 6 years, and my role focuses on the web portfolio and digital comms in general.
Thank you, Luke. And then we also have Marie joining us. Marie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Marie Fitzgibbon. I'm based here in Vancouver. I'm Director of Customer Acquisition on the marketing side for 1-800-GOT-JUNK. We're the world's largest junk removal company. I hope you've heard of us. I've been with the company for 7 years, and really excited to be part of the panel today.
Great, thank you so much, everyone. I also forgot a small bit of housekeeping. If you haven't already done so, viewers out there, please do make the video portion of the platform full screen again, as you hopefully did for Duncan's talk, because there are no slides here, it's just us talking. And the camera will automatically switch to whoever is talking at a certain point, so you should be able to see that view. So yeah, please go ahead and do that. So Luke, in your role, I mean, I was incredibly inspired by what Duncan was saying about, how we can all tap into creativity and innovation, and that we know how to think in this way. We just kind of shut it down. And we're actually usually our own worst enemies in terms of getting in the way of our best ideas. So I'd love to know a little bit more about what are the biggest barriers that you see in your role to creativity and innovation, and also how you can overcome those in in a kind of work setting?
Cool. Yeah, I think it's quite a topical question and one that everyone grapples with. I'm quite lucky because Anglo American is a company that really, over the last couple of years, I'd say, has put a strong focus on innovation and having a culture where we want everyone to have breakthrough thinking, not stay in the rigid forms of thinking that we used to. But saying that, I think there are still challenges that I face regularly. So I think one is quite topical for everyone listening in, and that's really COVID, in a word. I think the fact that here, particularly in London and the UK, I haven't been back in the office since March, and I think that plays quite a big role in, forming a bit of a barrier to having that creative thinking, because you're not in the office, you're not having those random conversations that often lead to those different ideas that don't come from just speaking to those people in your team or those people who work in comms. If you bump into someone in the kitchen and talk to someone who works in finance or in the sustainability team, you can have those moments of inspiration. So one thing I've been trying to do is having those regular video chats with people not within my department and making sure that I'm keeping that conversation going. And I think, as Duncan mentioned, it's the whole idea of the naive expert. So having those people there to listen to your ideas who aren't actually within your discipline, and that you can have that kind of viewpoint on it. So I think that's one challenge, and I think that's one kind of solution that I've been adopting. I'd say the second, that I think is also a common one for everyone listening in, is fear of failure. So I know that at Anglo American, even though we do encourage that innovative breakthrough thinking, we're still a very technical organization. So we have a lot of engineers who work there and a lot of people from engineering backgrounds. And that's all about precision and getting things right the first time. So it's sometimes tricky to get buy-in for anything that's not the usual established way of doing things. So I think for me, the way to get around that is to really, make sure that you adopt your own way of thinking and make sure you have that courage to go to your managers, go to your leaders, share your ideas, however, silly they might seem to you or what you're afraid they're gonna come across like, is just to have that confidence, which is hard to do. I think we all have that slight imposter syndrome sometimes where we think, I'm in the right, I don't want to get caught out as not knowing what I'm talking about, but it's really adopting that way of frame of thinking to make sure that, you do communicate your ideas. And then I think the final one that I thought of was, I think particularly as we're coming into Q4, I don't know about anyone else on the panel, but it really ramps up this time of year. So there's a lot going on. There's results, there's reporting, there's all these different kind of things. But I think having information and task overload and just having so much to deal with within your day-to-day, it's tricky to have that time to be creative and to innovate. The one kind of practical thing that I do is ensure that I put time in my diary just to have an hour, 2 hours, just to not have any set thing to do in that apart from come up with an idea or, have a think about a problem that's, been there for a while that, might require some innovative thinking. So yeah, I think they're my three main things.
Can I just follow on from
Sorry,
that,
go on,
Lucy?
Eloise. Yeah, definitely.
But just whilst Luke was talking, I was thinking, I think one of the biggest barriers this year has been, as you said, COVID, and now we head into this quarter, is the difference between firefighting and kind of actually having the time to be creative. I feel like from March onwards, we were doing so much firefighting, and you'd had these great plans, all these digital plans for the year ahead of stuff you were going to do and how you're going to do it. And suddenly we were just firefighting. And you can do that for a few months, right? And then suddenly it's a few more months and you're like, we can't just firefight. Like from a comms point of view, I haven't only got one message to get out there this year. I don't just want to tell everyone how we're making our places COVID safe. You know, there's other stuff we need to talk about, and I think that's been a real challenge. And we did similar to what you did, Luke. Actually, we sat as a team and said, right, we've got to just have two parallel streams of activity. You know, we will keep firefighting and we will do what we have to do. But hang on a minute, there's a bunch of other stuff, and we can't forget this other message and this other format, etc., etc. So we've done we sort of forced ourselves into a room, which is really hard to do when you're super busy, right? And you're thinking, oh God, I haven't got the time. But this worked really well, and it's just that kind of reminding yourself, come on, you've got to talk about this stuff. You've got to be creative. Well, not got to be creative, but you know, it helps sort of push yourself, as it were.
Yeah, totally. And I think it's a funny time, isn't it? You know, it's unprecedented times. We haven't had anything like this before, so no one really knows the way to navigate, really. So it's kind of for you to make that call. And I think for us, in terms of COVID, we've experienced, you know, are we doing too much COVID messaging? Are we not doing enough? So it's kind of that back and forth. But then you have to have that time to step back and be like, right, we've got the other stuff to do, the other stuff we have to think about and evolve as, you know, digital comms should. So yeah.
Has that also been true for you, Marie, thinking about it from a kind of customer acquisition side of things and the way that you engage with customers when you kind of want to talk about the stuff that you need to talk about, but top of everyone's mind is the elephant in the room, this global pandemic over here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was very disruptive for us to have to think about, you know, how do we redo our business and how do we communicate safety to our customer and how do we operate? But at the same time, we also found like, you know, during this time, the home is so important to the customer right now. All of us are at home, and we realize like this is actually amazing opportunity for us to connect with the customer in a new way and help them to rethink, how they can use our services to make their homes more enjoyable during this time. So we actually found ourselves, you know, thinking about them, well, maybe they need to create a space for working out, or maybe they need to create a space for homeschooling, or, you know, maybe like different things are happening now that actually give us an opportunity again to be helpful. So we definitely found ourselves, we dealt with our COVID messaging, we got that out there, and we did a lot to kind of, you know, reorganize how we speak about our safety. But then we started to focus on the home and built a lot of really new content and engaging messaging around making your home a better place. And actually within our team, I found the thing that worked the best was we would have a hackathon on Zoom. So we would all come together, everyone would submit their ideas in the week in advance, like what are some creative new ways that we can reach customers. And there were so many great ideas that surfaced. And then we would, you know, select maybe one thing that we can work on and go from there. So that was a good new way for us to work. We probably wouldn't even do that in the office. So yeah, it was great.
I love that, Zoom hackathons. And I guess, Luke, as well, that speaks to what you're saying. When you're not seeing people, you don't get that opportunity to have that spontaneous conversation. Something I talked about a lot with my team as well is we had a session where we were talking about, you know, how's everyone doing? What are you missing? And that was the biggest thing. Was I'm still talking to people, but I'm talking to the same people because it's around a project or it's around, you know, within a team structure versus, well, I used to just, when I make my cup of tea or I got my breakfast in the morning, I'd see all these different people and we talk about different things and it would spark something. But it's also interesting to hear, Marie, that, you know, there are opportunities to try and bring that creativity back and find new stories to tell, new messages to put out, and different ways of doing it. Eloise, for you at British Land, is there a role with, you know, we were talking about, you've got this kind of COVID message and making places COVID secure, making them safe and communicating that, but then you have your existing stuff that you want to talk about, what you're doing as a business. And what is the role for you in that as for creative storytelling? Because I know, and I can imagine, I'm hearing it, because it's the sort of comments I get in workshops and things, that it's all well and good for someone like Duncan at Disney, or, you know, previously at Disney, to stand up and say, oh yeah, we did this, and then we built a ride, and I phoned up NASA, and it was great. They were all in. That's not necessarily the case for everyone, every business. So yeah, interested, Eloise, to know what role does it play for you, that creativity, that innovation?
Yeah, it's really interesting actually, because yeah, we don't have Disney rides to talk about, sadly. And when we are in the business of retail and offices, and a project will take an awfully long time. So you're like, flip, how do I get people excited about this journey we're on as a corporate? And actually, there's been a real shift, which has been great, and I suspect why we're all here is there was a real shift in kind of from corporate communications. It used to be pretty dull, to be honest. It was like, we're going to tell you about our results, we're going to tell you a few press releases, and then we're done. We're going to sit quietly in our office. And I think digital has just been amazing for that, because it's kind of opened us up to all our different stakeholder groups. So we have stakeholder groups who are like our local community or local planning offices, or there's all different types of stakeholders, and digital makes us accessible to everybody, which thus encourages us to be more creative. And I've loved that challenge, and I think that's why I do this job today, because what I thought was good last year, I don't think it's good anymore. I've got a new version of good, and I love chasing that. So I was thinking about, what have we done that I might not have done a few years ago, and this may not be Disney. Let's be honest. A property company is not Disney, but we've done things like we had an Instagrammer in residence, and one of our challenges was we've got some really great assets out there, and we send a photographer out and they take some photos and they're nice. Could we do it differently? So we ran a little competition, and we got a bunch of people entered, quite a lot of people actually, and we chose someone from that, and they became our official Instagrammer in residence. We ran it for 2 years. The people who entered the competition and won loved it, because they got access to places that they wouldn't normally get, behind the scenes, going up. We used throwing the cheese grater in London, going up the top of there is pretty cool. And it was a really nice way for someone else to put a different slant on our business. And I think in recent times, it's just thinking, I'm not a big fan of using technology for technology's sake. It's got to kind of serve a real comms purpose for me. So I was never much fussed about podcasts, but actually that has flipped totally. And particularly during lockdown, we've done so many podcasts, and internally this has proved a really great way to communicate to all our colleagues. And that's been really interesting for me, because I didn't think it would work as well as it had done. So I think, I'm not sure I quite answered your question actually, but it's more just talking about, it's just being creative but being flexible. I think it's in our roles, we have to just keep being flexible. Marie talked about, there was suddenly an opportunity, and it's that flexibility to go, okay, we're going to divert, and with that, to me, is creativity, is that flexibility, that innovation, and using different channels and different techniques.
Yeah, definitely. It's there's always, what is it? Yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, right? Suddenly you can't speak to people, so how do you communicate with them? A case in point is the platform that everyone is watching this on today. That is something that, as a product, we at Invested Digital have developed as a response to what our clients now need, because everyone's no longer together, which is a shame. But there are ways of trying to solve those new challenges for audiences, even if they're not the ones that we were thinking about before. And Marie, you kind of touched on that idea of, as your audience's needs have changed, and they obviously everyone's spending more time at home, and part of what you do is to help them make their homes a nicer place by getting rid of the stuff they don't want anymore. How have you kind of been engaging with those audiences to understand what those needs are? Is it a case of following your gut? Are you looking at data? I know that you do a lot on the kind of social channels and tracking that from a performance point of view. How is it that you get in your audience's front rooms, as Duncan was talking about, be it a place at the moment where you're definitely not allowed to go?
Yeah. So I'll just share. Some time ago, before COVID, our team members would regularly actually go out on the trucks and go to the customer's home, and they would actually be part of the job. So that was, at a time when you could have multiple people sitting in the truck. But today it's just one person driving the truck. Actually, 2 trucks have to go to the job. So we no longer can do something like that. But we do have a very large call center, and we get a lot of data from our customers through the phone, and we track all of our all of our paid digital phone calls, and my team actually have access to listen in on phone calls, and that's actually our greatest source of information about the customer. You can hear how they're feeling, the things that they're talking about, and we can really understand like the sentiment from phone calls. I think it's our big one. And yes, social as well. We have social listening tools and review sentiment. We get thousands of reviews every month, and we're looking at the content of those and how people are expressing their joy around service and what it was that impacted them when we were there, whether it was they were downsizing because their child was moving out and going to college, or whatever it is. We can understand those moments that they're experiencing, and then how we can service them. So yeah, I think our phone system is our real connection with our customer, and we can hear their voices and understand what's going on with them.
And Luke, I was just thinking then, as Marie was talking, for someone like you, where you have, you mentioned at the beginning in your intro, these different sites across the globe where presumably things are different. Whether you're in Chile, whether you're in South Africa, whether you're in Peru. And has that impacted the sorts of things that you've been doing in terms of creative storytelling, the sort of messaging you've been putting out? Are you having to kind of suddenly keep abreast of everything, like all the numbers in different places, and how that impacts what you can say where?
Yeah, it's quite an interesting one. I mean, even before the situation this year, with all of the different regions we operate in, there's so many different cultural differences. So, a message that resonates in South Africa would resonate very differently in Peru. For example, in South Africa, that's where we're most well known. That's where we've been well established for, I think, 100 years now. So it's interesting to juggle. I work with the comms teams in each of those regions, and they develop their own regional appropriate material. But I think one of the challenges is that while you have that regional difference, it still needs to have that thread that is classically Anglo-American. It's us, and that's done through different ways. So that's it could be brand, aligning everything to the brand, and it all has to align to our central purpose, which is to reimagine mining to improve people's lives. And yeah, it's an interesting one. And then this year, obviously, with just how the pandemic is impacting different regions in different ways at different times, it's a funny one, because obviously you've got different messages. So we've currently running a campaign to make sure that people don't become complacent around COVID in different regions. So we're sending out reminders about wearing masks, about washing your hands, all that kind of thing. But then in Australia, there it's not a problem at the moment. So we're not going ahead with that kind of comms there. So there's that kind of balancing act. But yeah, I think there'll always be regional differences. But I think when I was listening to Eloise speaking about the way that she communicates and the role of creative storytelling for her company, I think for us it's very much around video. That's our main source or main channel for creative storytelling, as we've got quite a few different complicated strategic messages that are falling beneath our purpose, but we have a lot of things which video we find is the best way to communicate those messages.
And has that always been getting that buy-in? Because when we began this discussion, you were talking about you've had this shift in Anglo-American where you've moved towards more kind of breakthrough thinking and encouraging that, but there is this fear of failure still, and there's always a balance, right? I can imagine an engineer being like, failure is not an option, which is probably a good thing. But with getting buy-in from senior management into something like using video in it regularly, how did you kind of get them on board with that, or is was it a case of, you go off and do it, if it works, great, or did you have to do some hard yards in terms of convincing them?
No, I'm quite lucky. So our department I think it's the comms department at Anglo American is or corporate relations has got a good standing in Anglo American. So I think Mark, so the CEO, he has a respect for it and he understands the value of comms. So, I think for us, it's always been something ever since I've joined anyway that, we've always had the wiggle room to be able to be a bit more experimental in some ways and, be able to create these great assets. So yeah, it's not been too hard for me. I've been lucky.
Has that been the experience of everyone on this panel? I'm going to put you on the spot here. I suppose people now that Luke has told us about his fantastic bosses and management.
I mean, obviously, yeah. I mean, obviously, we have amazing management. I say that before I go any further. They are wonderful and highly accomplished. I think we've definitely been on the journey, actually. When I start, this is a really good example. A few years ago, we kind of identified that a good way for us to talk to the market was on social media. And then actually, with our CEO being active on social media. So there was a few conversations and a bit of encouragement, and now our current CEO is really active on Twitter, and that enables us to reach a really different group of people, and the level of engagement that he can get is loads better than us, which is quite annoying, but it just enables us. It's really great. So I think we just had to sort of prove it along the way. So I think we were perhaps a bit behind Luke's guys, so we were just sort of trying to prove it to people. I think also just taking the fear out, like no one wants to look stupid. Like I'm not going to persuade them to do a video where, like, when our current Prime Minister was Mayor of London, went on a zip wire across London. I'm not going to ask any of my managers to do that. I think that is a bad idea unless you're doing something strange. But so I think it's just taking them on that journey, and actually once you've started, it does get a load easier. So videos, I've found it's best if there's not many people around. So from a practical point of view, if there's more than just a couple of us in the room, people get really nervous, they feel really worried. So actually my role in a lot of those cases is a lot of hand holding. And so it's been quite gentle, and the more people see it, then they go, oh, hang on, I want to do that, I can do that. So it's been a real step by step, and we're just about to get next month a new CEO, and it's been quite interesting that he's suddenly had to have all these conversations with me about his non-existent social media profile, and that's been great. He's sort of had to be persuaded why it's worthwhile, and there's lots of conversations about that, and the use of video, like Luke was saying, because video just gets us where other comms can't get us. So yeah, it's just a gentle process and lots of proof points.
I was actually going to ask you, Eloise, about that one of the things that Duncan talked about was getting into the front rooms of your audience, which Marie touched on, with the shift that they've seen with their consumers, and obviously they're getting that data from their phones and what it is that people are enjoying about the experience that they've had with that kind of like client-facing side of things. But it sounds like from what you're saying, it's not just about for success in your role. It's not just about getting inside the kind of the end users of your building's heads. It's also about getting inside the heads of your internal, your employees, but also the people that you need to kind of help you create this content, whether that's a video with the CEO or whoever it might be.
Yeah, I think that's entirely true. I think when Luke was speaking a little while ago, I was thinking about, how do we go about it? And this, we look at stats like everyone. We look at engagement. We're looking at, how much does anyone engage with this content? When do they engage with it? What format? I'm not afraid of putting the same content out quite a few times in different ways. And internal stakeholders are hugely important. And they are, if we can help understand them, then we can understand their audiences. I don't pretend to kind of understand all the different audiences. I'm not a planning officer in the local council. I do not really understand how they want to go about stuff. However, my person at British Land does know that person. And I think what became really clear in times of crisis is the importance of having those relationships in place with your internal stakeholders. without it being a formal process, it's really worth having those kind of roadshows where you're going around the building. And if you can't go around the building, you will just drop an email, have a quick chat with somebody just to say, hi, how's it going? What's on your radar for the year ahead? So we have kind of like a quarterly editorial board with the purpose of just at least knowing what the headlines are for the quarter ahead or the year ahead. And then that, excuse me, allows you to kind of plan accordingly a little bit. And so when crisis hits, I'm like, okay, I kind of get that this is a really worrying time for our community. They feel like a really core stakeholder, a really core audience. So let's think about how we can communicate with them, and then we can look back on our stats. So you're right, but like for all of us, we've all got multiple people that we're both internally and externally, and then externally that you're trying to talk to. It's it's a challenge, but an interesting one.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you mentioned there, Eloise, times of crisis are when all of that stuff suddenly seems to accelerate. And if you don't have those relationships already, you're suddenly kind of scrabbling around, or when you don't have something, you mentioned editorial boards and having that regularity of what is it that we're doing, what is it that we want to say, even if we have to change that, at least you know the people that you're going to and who it is that you're going to engage with. But I think definitely this year, if probably, well, no years in my professional career anyway, it feels like all of that stuff has accelerated beyond belief, because suddenly everything is digital first. There isn't that face to face, and if you don't have those relationships, it is difficult to build them through a Zoom screen as much as, or whatever platform of choice. And I was wondering, Marie, from a kind of customer point of view, have you seen that as well? So you talked about the phone and your team used to go out on the trucks and see your customers and have that interaction. Have you seen a kind of a change in that, in terms of how quickly their motivations, their personal situations are changing, and then how you can adapt as a business? Or was it very much, we have these things in place, let's rely on them and see where we go from here?
Yeah, I would say, I guess, I think our CEO is very much willing to fail. Like, this is a motto that we have as part of our company culture. So we're always open to testing and doing new things, and particularly in digital, because you can really test something small. You don't have to share the message to the whole world yet. You can just see how it resonates. So I think that's probably what we rely on. We have a culture of testing and seeing what the result is. Okay, it didn't work out, that's it. So I think we were able to continue that. All my team members, they're pretty good at asking, can we have dollars to spend on this pilot? Can we do this and that? And that's kind of how it works. And then, if we find something that we want to do more with, then we will surface that, and then we'll get support from other teams to actually do it. And maybe, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but it's that, yeah, we already kind of work in a test and learn way, and promote better ideas once they're successful. So we were able to continue that as we sort of work with new audiences during this time, and kind of use some of those processes we already have. Yeah.
And did you see anything in particular, like with the changes, where stuff has worked in the past and now it's just a complete no-go? Or is it kind of the same?
Yeah, actually for us, the video was really challenging, because we had videoed, the videos that we have were done, in homes where before there was physical distancing and that type of thing. So to be able to quickly turn around video was actually not really possible for us. So we had to, find ways to just put overlays on the video, or find clips of them that there was just one person in it. And yeah, like being really conscious of how things look on video, that was huge challenging. Yeah.
All the little things you never thought you'd have to think
yeah
about.
Right. Someone's not wearing gloves, they can't be in this anymore.
Too
Right?
close,
Yeah, those
too
type of
close.
things.
Yeah. Don't touch them. I remember with my team, we were editing something and there was a great shot, but we had to take it out because it was user generated content, but two people were too close to one another. So we
all of
couldn't use
that.
it. Which is a real shame, but
Yeah.
it is the reality of where we are.
Mhm.
Has that also been the case for you? I mean, Luke, I know that you use film on a regular basis, but has there been a shift in terms of the sorts of things that you can talk about that you're putting out from a creative storytelling point of view because of what's happened, or is it just this was a strategy that was working and it's still working?
Yeah, I think for us, it's like you guys have just said, it's the whole, ensuring what you're showing is adhering to the regulations of that region at that time. So it's kind of been easier for us just to avoid any shots or footage where people are close together, even if it was filmed pre-pandemic. We've just kind of avoided that for as long as we can at the moment. But I think it'll be interesting to see how we go back to, what's after that. Obviously, we can't plan anything because we don't know how everything's going to pan out over the next few months. But it'll be interesting to see how companies adapt their comms and how that changes. Is it going to be a slow change, or it's just a very interesting time, I think, to look at what everyone's doing, and it's everyone's got different approaches to things, and yeah, it's just quite an interesting / weird time.
Lucy, if I can, one of the things that we've been really balancing on a kind of more marketing and brand point of view is if we showed photos of all of our assets, which are retail, shopping centres, retail parks, offices, if we showed those as they are now, those are desperately uninspirational. Would you want to move into an office in 5 years that had, 2 people and there was no enlivenment? So we've had to really balance that. We had an initial conversation where I was saying, come on, we need to get rid of all these groups of people. And then we had a real tussle, which was a really interesting one between me and some of the marketing team, were saying, we've got to inspire. Like, you are asking people to, and we always have because we develop properties, you are asking people to look to the future. And actually, we need to inspire still and say that it will be different. We're conscious, we don't have massive groups of people. You hopefully don't go on the website and check and tell me. But hopefully there aren't too many pictures of big groups of people. There are kind of more spaced out, but we still want to remind people a bit of normal life. So I think it's Luke said, a really interesting, challenging time. So you are having to look at imagery a lot on a regular basis, but perhaps more so than you would have done previously.
That's a good point. Yeah. You are still selling that dream, which, just thinking as we kind of move into the last 10 minutes or so of our discussion, sort of brings us neatly back around. So thank you, Eloise, because we didn't practice this, to that idea of, whilst there has been so much change, and not just with COVID, but also with the focus on systemic racism, a much bigger focus on diversity and inclusion, and rightly so, all of these things are impacting the way that businesses are thinking about doing businesses and how think about doing business, how they communicate to all their audiences, whether that's someone who's applying for a job, whether that's a customer, whether that's someone who lives next door to a potential new site for a business. So I'm interested to hear from all of you, but maybe we should go in an order again, because I know these things are tricky online. You will start talking over one another. What do you think the role of kind of company brand and purpose is when it comes to meeting audience expectations, given that so much has changed this year and is changing and there is so much uncertainty? When, to your point, Eloise, you still want to sell that dream, you still want to talk about, the way that you do business, the sorts of things you can offer, given that, that stuff still matters to people. I'm in the office today. I know it looks like there's no one here with me, but I promise you, people out there are. And everyone who's in is talking about how they feel that they really need to come into the office. Maybe it's not every day, but they do still want to come in. They still want to see people. They want that spontaneity. They want to be able to spark ideas, have that creativity, get out of their homes, get away from their families, whatever it might be. So interested. Let's start with you, Eloise, because you kind of brought it neatly back around. But if we could go around, it's just, do you think there's still a purpose to brand purpose given how everything's been torn up this year?
Yeah, I'm going to say yeah. I'm going to say yeah, because if we are going to be authentic in our communications, you have to be consistent. You've got to be what we may have talked about a different subject matter this year, and it might not have been drastically not my plans, but we've talked about different stuff, but we've got to talk about it measured against our purpose. We've got to talk about it authentically to our brand, because otherwise we become a different person, we become a different company, and the people that we want to engage with need us to be the same company, right? The communities that we've worked with, the customers say, there's some really great stories out there, and we've just remained, in my opinion, really true to ourselves, and we've kept going back to those people in the same way, and our communication's been the same, even though it's been really difficult, and we've perhaps got different stuff to talk about. We've maintained our, I think, kind of consistent approach. So for me, there was a real authenticity through everything we did, and I'm really proud of everyone how they've done it this year, because it's been bonkers hard work. But yeah, I think that sort of answers your question. I think you've got to be authentic to your brand. You've got to, if as a comms professional there's times of doubt, you go back and you look at your purpose and you say, okay, that's kind of what we've got to say. Does this piece of comms help us achieve that? If it doesn't, then don't do it.
Yeah. Marie, is that true for you as well, in terms of brand purpose still being relevant?
Yeah, so I mean, our brand purpose is to make the ordinary business of junk removal extraordinary. That's what we've described as our brand purpose. But during this time, I think we're seeing that evolve, and it's actually appointed a new role, Chief Purpose Officer. So I know that this is like really important to our business, to our leadership, how we evolve our purpose even more now, considering people's lives have changed, and what else we can bring. It's through our communications. I don't particularly work on I don't I'm not on the branding team, I'm on the performance team, but I see them, iterating here and working to develop the purpose even more now, considering everything that's happened in the world in the last 6 months. Yeah.
And do you see that from a performance point of view? Do you see it resonating with your audiences?
Yeah, I think there's more we can do. I think we've been doing a great job with our purpose to this point, but because the world has changed so much, I think there's more we have to offer. Even I think an area, we're looking more at how we communicate around sustainability and how we communicate our environmental impact. And there's new areas for us where we need to speak up more and share more.
Great, thanks, Marie. And is that, I mean, speaking about those kind of doing more with purpose, you also mentioned the brand purpose for Anglo American, Luke, earlier in the call. And does that feel, in terms of what Marie has just shared there, does that feel true for you as well? If kind of we've got to this point and actually everything that has happened, and maybe whilst plans, as Eloise said, what you're planning in January is maybe not what actually happened, but does it feel like it's almost a catalyst to take it to the next level?
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that's really helped in terms of talking about our purpose externally this year has been, as Eloise was saying, it's got to be authentic, and we've really shown that we're true to our purpose with our actions around COVID. So yeah, the purpose is reimagining mining to improve people's lives, and that's really a combination of innovation and then having a positive community and societal impact. And one thing we've established this year is our We Care program, which has been designed and set up specifically in response to COVID, where we've established testing centres, we've offered mental health help, we've provided donations to communities, all these different great things. And that makes what I do, talking about the purpose externally, so much easier. And you can feel confident in what you're saying because it's authentic, because there's action behind it. It's not just a tagline. So yeah, I feel this year it's taken our purpose to a new level, because we are truly demonstrating it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm really selling Anglo American.
And that's kind of your job. But I think, you know, it's so interesting speaking to all three of you, because whilst we have the keynote from Duncan, where that purpose is something that everyone knows Disney as a business, right? And everyone has probably had some sort of interaction with them at some point in their lives, whether or not they've been to the theme parks. But talking about that idea of, you know, putting yourself in your audience's shoes, whether that's internal or external, talking about those same barriers that you can have to innovation, you know, not having the time, having your plans ripped up, and then how you overcome them, whilst all three of you are from very different businesses, whilst you've all got different focuses, and Duncan again is different to that. What I'm hearing anyway, and hopefully audience out there is hearing, that there are these similarities and there are ways of overcoming them, whether that's through your Zoom hackathons, whether that's through, you know, organizing a socially distant get together in the office, Eloise, of everyone spaced out so that you can coach your new CEO on the best way to use video. You know, it's actually really heartening, I think, after what has been a strange year for all of us, to hear that, you know, there is good stuff happening. There is still that drive to be authentic, to push communications forward, to do something exciting with the storytelling that you're doing, and whatever way that might be shifting message, because, you know, suddenly, Marie, you've got people setting up home gyms and they need to get rid of, I don't know, the kid's bed or whatever was in the way beforehand, or whether that's talking about, you know, what's happening in Chile versus Australia, or the future of offices. So that feels like a great place to end it, and we have used up our 45 minutes. But thank you to all three of you. I certainly learned a lot from talking to you and really enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys did too, and hopefully everyone at home has got some great takeaway points. Just a few closing statements from me for those of you at home. So really excited about tomorrow's event, which will be emceed not by me, you'll probably all be relieved to know, but by Simon Gittings, our creative director. So he will be running that. And excitingly as well, we have Deborah Leff joining Simon for the keynote speech. So she is the former CTO of IBM and IBM Watson. So I'm sure she's going to have loads of great insights. Tomorrow's theme is around the build it and run it portion of connected content, which is all about technology and how you maintain things. So once you have the ideas, once you know who it is you're speaking to and what it is they want to talk about, how do you then turn that into an amazing digital experience that people engage with, and that you can track how they're engaging with it so you can make it better and better and better. I will leave that to Simon and Deborah and David Corchado, our CTO, to talk to you all about tomorrow. So final things from me today are just to say, please don't forget about the I Will Challenge. Go over to the networking tab, put what it is, the one thing that you're going to change in there, and we will follow up with you. Thank you all for joining today. For everyone who joined, as Don mentioned at the beginning, we are planting 5 trees per person. So if you join every day, that's 15, which is really cool. And I think they'll thrive if they're being planted in London, because it's done nothing but rain for the whole time that we've been on this call today. And yeah, that's it. The networking channel, the Tell It channel, will be open for another hour. So do go over there and have a chat, and you know, hopefully there's some lively discussion. I haven't had a look, but I'm going to jump in now. Thank you very much for joining today, everybody. Hope that many of you can make it back tomorrow. Big thank you to all my panelists again for joining me, and thank you to Duncan for joining earlier in the call as well. And that's it. Enjoy the rest of your days and your evenings, mornings, lunches, wherever it is, wherever you are. Yeah, thank you.